Wayne Caton, and I've been a CASA for close to 8 years, coming up in August. It seems like just yesterday that I became a CASA. And why did I become a CASA? I became a CASA because I was bored in retirement and I wanted to give back to the community. It's something that I have a passion for, and I didn't know anything about the CASA organization whatsoever, but the ED at the time tapped me on the shoulder and said, I understand you want to volunteer. So I decided to volunteer with CASA, and here I am 8 years later. I have had several cases since I've been a CASA volunteer, and my first one actually was 5 years, and that's not really the normal, or I should say the norm, but it was a situation where this boy was 13 years old, and he aged out at 18, and so I was with him for 5 years. And another one I'd like to talk about a bit was a boy that was in the system for quite some time, and he was wheelchair bound. He had MD, excuse me, and he didn't have much in the way of feeling in his hands or his legs, so he really was wheelchair bound. And he bounced around from many different homes, and I had an opportunity to work with him, and knowing what his disease was going in, I knew that his life expectancy was less than most of us, and unfortunately we did lose him. But I did have the pleasure of officiating over his memorial, and that was such a blessing to me, and that is just something that I wanted to do. He had already aged out of the system, actually, and I wasn't in his CASA at that time. He was in South Georgia, but I ended up continuing to visit with him in North Georgia. And because he really didn't have any family, he thought he had his forever family, but his family, the foster family that had him at the time, decided that they just couldn't handle the situation any longer. So anyway, I ended up befriending him, and like I say, even though he'd aged out of the system, I continued to work with him. I'll tell you, being a CASA was awakening for me. I lived such a sheltered life before I became a CASA, and like I said earlier, that's something I really didn't know a whole lot about before, but giving back to the children in need in our community is so important. And been fortunate. When I first came on, we didn't have that many male volunteers. We have more now, but we could still use more. And I tell you, this is such a great feeling. It's, you know, the children bless us. Hopefully we bless them a wee bit. And it's just an opportunity that we continue to work with them day in and day out, no matter what the situation is. One consistent thing that a child has with a CASA is that consistency. We have situations where we have quite a lot of turnover with DFACs, for example, so they may have several caseworkers. But with CASA, generally, most of the time, you just have one CASA, unless something comes up and somebody moves or something like that, but there'll be one CASA on a case. And so you do have the opportunity to learn more about the child, and that is important. You have to gain their confidence, and that's not something that comes overnight, but once you have that confidence and you see those smiles, the smiles that we didn't have before, when you first met them perhaps, that is just a blessing without a doubt. And I'll tell you, we can always use more volunteers. CASA organization is very well respected, I believe, in the community, and I can't emphasize enough how much the judges rely on our reports when we report, and we do have hearings generally every 6 months, but sometimes less, depending on the situation. And I tell you, that was probably the most surprise to me, I think I would say, the respect that the judges have for the CASA's opinions. And we do have the opportunity to speak to the judge. The judge always asks the CASA volunteer, do you have anything to add? And we take that opportunity. And again, it's just, I'm so happy I did it, and I am going to continue to be a CASA volunteer. Till the Lord tells me it's time to quit. So I just appreciate the time to talk to you today, and again, I just thank you so much for the support the community gives to CASA, and all of us actually, all of us in the system. You have DFACs, which we work very closely with, and we also work closely with the attorneys that represent the child also. So as a volunteer, of course, we're a volunteer, a CASA volunteer. But again, it's something that I thoroughly enjoy, and I'm blessed to have had the opportunity to be a CASA.